Gaijin Entertainment presents The Shooting Range. You're watching The Shooting Range, a weekly show for all tankers, airmen, and aspiring captains in War Thunder. In this episode, the Soviet Flying Giant, or why don't we attach some planes to another plane? The best tanks of all nations. Which one is king? Hotline. The developers answer questions that you left in the comments. But first, let's start with a Canadian vehicle that is always full of surprises. This tank is, in a way, a child of two generals, Sherman and Lee. The location of the ammunition rack and the fuel tanks scream Sherman. The turrets and a good frontal armor are all very Lee. And on top of that, you get a 57mm gun courtesy of the King. Not too shabby for its rank. Speaking of the rank, in this case, it is definitely on the lower side. Most of your opponents will drive some early T-34s, KV-1s, and Panzers. Your frontal armor will be impervious to most shots coming from all medium tanks in your level. But be very careful with your turret. It's your most vulnerable spot. It doesn't have much in terms of armor, while most of your crew members are sitting right there. The very first enemy APHE shell might leave you with just a driver and a radio operator. The latter, by the way, has his own little turret that is equipped with a machine gun. If you shoot at this turret, you're making a huge mistake. In the best case scenario, you just incapacitate a single tanker, all while getting a high caliber gift from your new Canadian friend every 4 seconds. There is another important thing to remember. During their first encounter with the M4A5, many players failed to deal any serious damage to the tank as they mechanically shoot at its hull. That's your time to strike. First, get rid of the enemy gunner, then break the gun. After that, you'd only have to finish the job. By the way, make a habit of angling your armor and try not to expose your lower glacis. Both of these things will greatly increase the survivability of the RAM. It's not all roses though. Your shells can penetrate only around 110mm of armor, tops. Yeah, it's more than enough to take care of your opponents, but only if you're standing at a right angle relative to the enemy. To make things even more interesting, you can only use solid shot shells. Forget about that behind armor blast effect. You don't need it. And the last thing, don't rush, be patient. This vehicle shines in close combat, but you just can't rush it without a plan. At least make sure that there are no nasty surprises at your flanks. Now we'll talk about the world's first cantilever wing 4-engine heavy bomber. In the late 20s, giant planes were all the rage. The introduction of light alloys opened up a sea of possibilities, and speed wasn't a top priority for aircraft designers of that era. They dreamed of flying giants and envisioned enormous useful loads. They wanted to build planes that could carry more bombs than ever. Andrei Tupolev, an ambitious aircraft maker and an outspoken advocate of all-metal designs, claimed that he could build a new Soviet all-metal heavy bomber that would be every bit as good as the planes that were being manufactured abroad. It wasn't just words. His design bureau was already making the reliable twin-engine TB-1, or Heavy Bomber 1. Now, they just had to make it a bigger, 4-engine version of the proven design. The TB-3, or Heavy Bomber No. 3, was engineered and built in next to no time. In 1932, it was already flying. Needless to say, the project was a huge challenge for everyone involved. What's truly interesting, as Tupolev later remarked, the numerous problems and obstacles that the team encountered and had to get rid during the process were very beneficial to the Soviet aviation as whole. The designers didn't have any out-of-the-box solutions. Most of the ideas and things that came up with were actual breakthroughs. In the end, they built a giant bomber that could be produced in hundreds, transported in assembled boxes, and then assembled right on the spot. Basically, the TB-3 single-handedly made the USSR one of the world leaders in aircraft design. By the time World War II was in full swing, the TB3 was muscled out of service by the fast monoplanes of a new generation, but it didn't stop the Giant from performing transport and bomber duties throughout the war. Not exciting enough? Alright, what about the idea of a talented engineer called Vladimir Vakhmistrov? He came up with a concept of a parasite aircraft. Basically, the idea was to ditch bombs and outfit the TB3 with a couple of Polikarpov I-16s. Yeah, a couple of fighters. And it worked. In August of 1941, this abomination destroyed a Romanian Nazi-controlled bridge and sent an oil depot aflame in full view of the shocked Germans. On the way back, the fighters also made time to strafe Romanian infantry. It would take countless hours to recount all crazy and glorious things this plane was a part of. We'll make it short. The TB3 was the first Soviet true heavy bomber that paved the way for the Russian supersonic bombers of today. At the same time, the TB3 is the father of all Soviet military transport aircraft. Among other things, it allowed for large-scale paratroop drops, enabling the Soviets to get their own airborne forces. After we've talked about a legendary plane, it's only fitting that we take a look at the best tanks of the game and compare them. Here are our four contenders, one from each tank nation: M60A1, Leopard A1A1, T62, and Chieftain Mark III. Let's see which tank is best when it comes to speed, maneuverability, firepower, and protection. First, we'll do some off-road driving. We put the tanks in a line somewhere in the fields of Poland and start the race. The Leopard immediately takes the lead. Right behind him is the Soviet T-62. Then comes the American tank, and the Chieftain is at the tail end. Well, it's clear that the Germans take the gold. 48 kilometers an hour, or 29.8 miles an hour. Good. Now for something trickier. Let's see how good these vehicles are at handling steep climbs of the Carpathians. According to the technical documentation, the Leopard should get the first prize. Again, the T-62 should come second, again, and the last two places should get to the M60A1 and the Chieftain. No surprises here. The reality is slightly different, though. The Soviet tank manages to keep up with its German rival despite having 4 less horsepower per ton. Here comes the next challenge. Which tank will be the first to make a complete 360-degree turn? The contenders are waiting in a line. Ready, steady, go! The Leopard spins like a tornado and emerges victorious once again. Other vehicles do it almost as fast as their German counterpart, but the T-62 manages to secure a split-second advantage. The next one to complete the turn is the Chieftain, and the American tank finishes last. Another victory for the German team. We're not done with turns yet. Let's check which tank has the best turret traverse. We compare the performance stats, and you guessed it, it's that bloody Leopard yet again. Vehicles are supposed to have flaws, or so we heard. What about others? The T-62's turret traverse is hard, and the M60A1 and the Chieftain Mark III are neck to neck. Okay, maybe the test of gun depression will shake things up a bit. Aha, now we're talking. The Leopard is 1 degree behind its American and British rivals. The T-62, well, it's a Soviet tank, so naturally it has very little gun depression. The Soviet guns are not allowed to be depressed, apparently. Now let's see which gun has the fastest reload speed with a maxed out crew. The Germans come out on top once more, just 7.1 seconds, and the second shell is in the air. The Chieftain takes the second place with 7.7 seconds. It took the American armor 8.3 seconds to reload, and the T-62... doesn't seem to be in a hurry to keep fighting. 12 seconds. Now for the last part, comparing protection. A quick disclaimer, we will not discuss heat shells and ATGMs. They'll wreck everyone. We'll test these tanks' armor with top-notch APHEs and APCR shells. When compared to other contenders, the mighty T-62 doesn't look too good. It has quite a few vulnerable surfaces and its driver must be suicidal. What's the deal with all that ammunition all around the driver's seat? But wait a minute. It seems like the drivers from all nations share the same passion for blowing up in a spectacular fashion. Alrighty then. The M60 is in a slightly better spot. Even though its mantlet and lower glacis are vulnerable to enemy fire, APCR cannot penetrate its upper glacis and turret cheeks. The Leopard is almost in the same position as the Soviet tank, but it can bounce some shots with its unique mantlet. The Chieftain is in a class of its own. Not every heat can make it through the Chieftain's upper glacis, and the turret has a ridiculously low profile and bounces shots on a regular basis. If you don't expose your lower glacis plate, you're probably golden. Who's the winner then? Well, the Leopard is the undisputed champion, but who comes next? The British armor takes the second place. Yeah, it's on the slower side, but it boasts some decent armor and firepower. Not to mention the fact that it comes with some free top-tier shells. The American M60A1 is the third. In some respects, it's even better than its British rival, but its armor leaves much to be desired, hence the third place. And our favorite T-62 takes the most prestigious fourth place. Don't worry, comrades. What it doesn't have in terms of turret traverse or armor, it has in speed and morale. Yes, to battle. Finally, it's time for the traditional last part of our show, Hotline. Developers answering questions from the comments. Strictly speaking, it's not the most serious-minded section of the show. If you want answers to be given with solemn faces, feel free to appeal to the official forums. Here we'll have a more lighthearted discussion of the big questions of War Thunder. We'll hope you like it. We'll start with a question from a player called Ethan Mitchell. Will the F6F5N be added? Hey Ethan, actually yeah, we are planning to add at least the F6F5 and the E5N. These are some nice planes. A player called Citherine writes, the 1124 does not seem to have the Katusha rockets on it. Can you explain? Well, it's pretty straightforward. The only one with the Katusha rockets is a premium vehicle that, at the moment, you can only get with a special Naval Battles pack, which will become available for owners once the CBT launches proper. The one without the rockets is just a regular 1124. Mind that the premium ships are not a part of the test just yet. The third question comes from Matthew N. What's the point of depth charges? Hey Matthew, in the current version of the naval gameplay, they're used for dealing with pursuers. Works like a charm. Then there's a message from a user called Adrian Alvarez. I want to be an aircraft carrier. You can be anything you want to be, my friend. Just believe in yourself. That's it for today, but feel free to write your questions in the comments below. We do read them all, and you might see some of them answered in the next episode. If you like what we're doing, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. See you on the shooting range.